Welcome to this VIP area at the DPW 2022 conference in Amsterdam. And I'm really happy to be here because I'm the one talking to a lot of speakers and guests and partners today. So next to me here is Gregor, and you are the CEO and founder of Scoutbee. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Scoutbee is connecting the world's procurement and supply chain to any data point needed to take good decisions. And my question is, it sounds like you have to take a lot of data into account. So how does Scoutbee deal with all those data?
Good question. I mean, let's go a little bit back into 2015 when the company was founded. And in the very early days, we were founded to make sense out of what we called internal supplier data spaghetti. And the challenge here is usually that data is scattered across systems, and it's very difficult to merge them. And one specific use case we have specialized on is to not only deal with internal data, but also external data. So this use case was then turning out to be supplier discovery. The very first use case based on our data platform. And to do supply discovery, you cannot only think about like a singular dimension, for example, a website or a certificate. You have to take the whole picture of the supply into account. And to do that, you have to mine data from trade shows, websites, third-party providers, Dun & Bradstreet, financials, all of that, and merge that to one singular supply record. And we've done this now for 7 years, and by doing so, we have scouted and identified more suppliers than anyone else in the industry, millions of data points, and we have specialized in merging those data records into one singular one. So that today we have two main products. One is still supplier discovery, but the other one is Scoutbee Intelligence that is today making sense out of internal supplier data spaghetti, using all the data know-how that we have and help the customer to create one singular data foundation and have this as a global data connector so they don't have to have any hassle with connecting with the outside world.
It's very clear what Scoutbee is doing. And let's have a look at the industry as a whole. Why do procurement leaders have to invest in data these days?
Excellent question. So focusing on ESG is that ESG is a somewhat of a new topic. And it's a unique window of opportunity also for procurement to increase their relevance and their impact into company, but also the planet. So procurement is predestined to take this lead here. They have most of the surfacing point. They have the biggest impact when it comes to actually the products because they are the ones interacting with the suppliers. However, it's not a given, right, that they can have this task, right? CIOs and all the other departments are also doing that and trying to interact with it. But again, like procurement, until today, did not really have a clear impact on the value proposition of a company. Now they can. They can make products greener, more sustainable, etc. That is a completely new setting, has never been there before. And to take this opportunity with both hands, procurement has to specialize in data, in particular right now, because the data landscape is exploding. I mean, DPW is also existing because there are so many vendors out there now that are able to provide data around diversity, sustainability, conflict minerals, forced labor, and all those very critical topics. However, if you think about the data complexity, how quickly that grows, let's go to 2010. A procurement person back in that day probably had a subset of their suppliers that were managed, 100, 200, and maybe 5 to 10 data points. So we are in total like complexity of 500 to 1,000 data points. Now we go into 2024, that's year after next year, where you probably have to not only take your whole supply base into account, that's already tens of thousands of suppliers, but also tier 2, and you not only have to connect it to 5 data points, but to 50. This number is not like 1 time, 2 times, 3 times bigger, it's quadrillion, right? It's like literally a number that I probably cannot even pronounce, like how complex this data problem will become. And if procurement doesn't fix that problem and dealing with such complex data systems, then they will probably not be able to take this opportunity with both hands. And last comment to that, all the software and solutions that they have right now are very much focused on improving the procurement processes, mostly downstream. So procure to pay, contracts, and all those pieces. Super essential software, so I absolutely need it. However, none of that software can actually deal with the data complexity, and it won't give you any competitive advantage. So if you want to take this chance with both hands, like, you have to figure out how to do data.
All right. And can you mention a more specific example of ESG?
Absolutely. So let's take, for example, a hot topic in the US is supplier diversity. And let's assume that in a given moment, companies do not only have to report supplier diversity on their top tier ones, but actually their whole tier ones and the tier twos. And now, however, you do have to understand also how much spend do they have, right, with the tier ones, and when, for example, the new contract is negotiated. So out of a sudden, you have to connect your internal spend data with external supplier diversity certification. You probably want to bring in a record like Dun & Bradstreet or EMIS to understand like how much revenue does this supplier make and how much more revenue can I make with this supplier. And later down the road, then you have to map this on top on the tier two. Like, we automatically are running here into a data issue that is considering probably millions of difference of data points and interrelations between external data, internal data, web data, supplier portal data, and all those pieces. And this means that, however, if all those data flows now into one consolidated platform like Scoutbee Intelligence, you can take very cool insights. You can, for example, take a look at how much negotiation power do I have with a certain supplier that is diverse or not diverse. Or, for example, I have a supplier that I spend a lot of money with, but this supplier is not diverse, and the system shows me a similar supplier in my ecosystem that is diverse, I spend not so much money with. So now you can actually pivot money to a more diverse supplier and increase actually your spend with diverse suppliers. And based on that, increase the value proposition of your company, maybe even improve bottom line, maybe the supplier is even cheaper, and all of that is almost completely automated. And that's not where we stop actually. Then we are only taking a look into your internal supplier base. As soon as we feel like, or the system feels like you do not have a good alternative supplier at hand, they can go into our second solution, Supplier Discovery, or Scoutbee Discovery, and they will recommend and find alternative suppliers for this very specific one, so that you always have an option at hand.
All right, yeah. So what does this mean then for procurement? Why should procurement leaders think about ESG when designing their strategic sourcing strategies?
Yeah, it's a new value proposition, or probably also duty that procurement has. I mean, procure, or to procure, comes from Latin procurare. It's like to take care of. I mean, that also means probably you have a certain responsibility to take this chance and to have an impact on planet, people, and your purpose of the company, and unshamedly also profit. Overall, this is the main task of a procurement person today, to improve that bottom line. Why to invest is that, again, like the chance is probably right now to have this bottom line impact and to improve the value proposition, not to improve, but well, to improve, but also have impact on that. That has not been there before. And from that side, it's not a process issue, it's not a talent issue, it's a pure data issue that you're running against. And it's right now a good time to invest in it. And it's not complex, it's not complicated, it's also not crazy expensive. You can actually run it in a complete separate data stream that you invest actually in your data foundation. You get a good understanding about your supply base. It helps you to take the decisions, and it's connected to all your internal systems without interfering with it, so that there's actually nothing holding back. It's just time now.
It sounds complex though, so do you have one advice for procurement leaders who are listening and watching us? Do you have one advice? How should they start with this?
Absolutely. So we're using a technology for that that's called knowledge graphs. It sounds super complex, but overall our duty is what we call internally decisions, not dashboards. We do not want to provide over complex access to data and insights. We want to provide a singular record of information that helps you to drive a decision. And if I would have one recommendation, is start simple. Start with a supplier profile that connects one internal data point, maybe spend, with an external data point, maybe revenue, and drive one decision, and that is, what is my buying power at this very supplier? easy, and start from there. No overly complex solutions, simply start from there and then follow your internal agenda. Maybe right now it's risk that is super important. Maybe it's diversity, maybe it's ESG, maybe it's something else.
Build it from there.
Exactly, build it out, follow your internal structure and your internal priority list, so you also get actually buy-in and you do not interfere with internal agendas, and then bit by bit build it out. It's at your fingertips, so it's absolutely achievable today in a couple of weeks or months, and I can only recommend contacting us, of course.
So thank you, Gregor, for this masterclass. I hope people will contact you at Scoutbee, and I hope you will enjoy this conference this year.
I will certainly do. Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.